Alrighty. We are live. Maybe a few minutes here. Okay. This is my first stream as a Twitch affiliate partner, the lower one. Partner, affiliate, I think. I don't know. Oh boy, this is weird. It's going to be a weird one. I don't think anyone's in here right now, but if you are watching this on YouTube as a stream, I have some thoughts. Oh wow, I've got people in here, like real fast. A lot of people. Hey, yeah, hi. So I'm doing something a little different than I normally do. Normally I read fan fiction online. I normally read at 7 o'clock at night Central Time.
Good.
Hey, it's Momo.
Me, I'm here.
Yeah, apparently I've got 6 people watching already, which is neat. And this is my first stream as a Twitch affiliate. And it's going to be a real fucking weird one for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
um,
2020 does not stop from keep
yeah,
happening.
so I guess you're going to be streaming this on your YouTube channel too, right?
Yeah,
This
we're gonna uh, I don't know what we're doing, but it's gonna be interesting.
this is the crazy communist Homestuck
Right.
power 2 hours.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. This is the communist two streams, so you have to watch it twice
Yeah,
between
you've got
different
to get the
people,
full
I
context.
guess.
To get the full
Right. It's
context, you need to watch.
because the better art's better, the more complicated and inaccessible and frustrating it is, as we
Exactly.
know.
It's
As
multi-layered.
we
It's a
know.
multi-layered process. So
I'm gonna go live on mine, I think, just right now, and I'll
awesome.
just
Watch both
uh,
at the same time.
watch both at the same time, and you'll unlock.
You'll,
You'll learn how to pilot Jaegers, I guess.
yeah, exactly. Something drifting. I don't know.
Precisely.
Yeah, if
Precisely.
the Twitch thing is accurate, and I do actually have 6 people tuning in right now. Just for some quick background, I normally stream fanfic tonight. I would normally stream it at 7 Central Time and just read fanfic for like an hour or 2 or 3 or 4. And Momo streams their work on the Act 8 Homestuck comic around this time ish on Sundays. Um, and
Yeah.
I've
Normally I start. I'm so
no
sorry.
go
Normally I
ahead.
start 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time,
Yeah,
and try to go to noon. But it's a little bit later today because Stuck at Home Con was yesterday,
yeah, that's
and then I
right.
stayed up all night playing video games with my
That's
friends.
legit. And I was also at Stuck at Home Con. We both did panels, which went really well, and Stuck at Home Con itself was really great. And
It went wonderfully. The
yeah, it
crowds
went really
That was
wonderfully.
fantastic.
And then so we've both been involved in the protests in our respective areas. Momo's been out doing like support work for the folks up in their area, and I've been out as a photojournalist. What games? Oh, what games? What games did you play, Momo?
I played Destiny. Sometimes we also play Warframe, but usually not in the same night. So yeah,
Very
Warframe and
cool.
Destiny. I
Awesome.
do love myself a sci-fi shooter.
I did not play games. What I did was I got done. So I was modding for the con. So I'm sitting in mod chat most of the day. We had like over 1,000 people. And I did a panel. And around closing ceremonies, I was checking my phone after um, after the day, and I got a bunch of text messages from the group chats that I'm in related to the protests, and I found out that someone had been shot. Specifically, one of the protesters was shot by a reactionary who drove their car into the crowd of people that were marching and opened fire 8 times. And the gentleman that was shot died, I think, before he even got to the hospital. This was not someone I knew particularly well, but it was someone that I knew. I've been doing the protests for a couple of months now, and this is someone that I saw out pretty much every single day. So I had a weird night. I would normally have been out on Saturdays, except that Stuck at Home Con was happening. Um, so I wasn't there. However, a lot of my comrades working for the paper were out, and a couple of them were right there when it happened. Um, so today is going to be different than normal. I'm going to do this for a couple hours, and then I'm going to go do some meetings and stuff. This is mostly going to be like talking about random shit. We're probably going to chat about like some projects we're working on, but from my end, I wanted to kind of like talk about why any of this shit matters, and I think that the people that are on with me probably have some thoughts about that too,
Right.
because we're all kind of
We
like,
should. Yeah, we should have
and
probably.
and my watchers drop in half, like, oh
It
shit, we're
it's
talking about bad stuff.
it's gonna be well, yeah. It's unfortunate. This is kind of the condition of our lives right now,
Yeah,
where if you we're trying to live normal lives while we're involved, because if you don't make it a part of your normal routine, you won't sustain it, and this cannot stop until we see results.
right.
Um, so you have to have these things adjacent to each other,
Oh
even
yeah,
though it creates this incredible cognitive dissonance. But I think you and I, who already have post-traumatic stress disorder,
yeah,
understand that very well, and this is not our first time in the rodeo, so to
yeah.
speak.
Yeah, I really like I had kind of like a manifesto type statement which I'm gonna talk about later because I originally said, oh, I'm gonna do this at 1, and then I'm like, nah, you know what, why the fuck not? I'll
Yeah.
just get on earlier. But like, like with Suck at Home Con, which is a really big, like really cool thing to see. I mean, all the people getting together and making it happen, no one's getting paid for it. There's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of projects that talk about the idea of like, so I guess the thing I kind of wanted to like tie all this together is like, why the fuck am I still working on like a Homestuck project? Like, why are either of us doing this? Like, we've both been out,
Right.
we both like see the shit that's happening. It's obviously serious, but we're still working on these projects for like a silly webcomic. Momo's working on this giant fucking comic. And I'm
Huge.
working on all sorts of things all the time. And we're both working on this project, New Game Plus, which I'm not going to talk a lot about the details of what we're specifically doing, but like it's not a secret anymore. This is like an explicitly communist inspired work. Like it's about,
Yeah, explicitly leftist,
yeah,
explicitly
it's
like new state ideas,
right.
ideas for a new society, a new state.
Exactly.
Um, yeah,
It's taking the
and
idea of the post Act 7
I love
world,
that.
but like as it develops into a communist society, and then how the characters are like introduced back into that. And like, I guess one of the things we've had a lot of conversations about is like the idea of how art plays into the idea of communism, the idea of leftism, the idea of revolution. Like, it tends to be treated like it's very serious. It's this deadly serious thing where you're reading a lot of theory, and you're focusing on reading Marx, and like educating yourself and being part of the revolution. Like that's important, but also like art doesn't stop being a thing, and art doesn't always have to be like this, like one for one, like it's the this what's the term for the Soviet style of art that was like very like depicting real life in a very like stark way.
Social realism.
Social realism, that was it. Thank
Yeah,
you. It's
I
not
only know
all.
that because it literally Thought Slime just mentioned it to
I
me.
actually, I was like, I know I saw this recently. It was the Thought Slime video. Yeah, like it doesn't have to
Yeah.
all be social realism. Like we can take these themes and put them into work that we already like. Like we're both stupid, filthy Homestuck fans. But
We're
like,
stupid, filthy, Homestuck fans for the unwashed masses.
but we're,
We're
we're
also filthy fucking communists.
hey, it's
Yeah,
another communist. This is
yay.
Bucky, who's acting as our director for the New Game Plus project. Momo.
Yeah, hey, I'm thinking like her. Oh, sorry.
Yo, go
I'm
ahead.
thinking like her, Bucky. I use he, here, and they, them pronouns. I don't know if we did
Yeah.
pronouns yet. I kind of hopped on late because I was in the tub and I took all my horse pills.
No, you're good. This is very like loosely structured at this point.
Figure out this gradient.
Yeah.
I'm trying to paint the ocean.
Those of you watching on Twitch, you know what? I could probably pull up your YouTube channel on my Twitch channel, and that will be very meta.
God, Inception.
Uh-huh.
Perfect. Just remember to mute it so that we don't have.
Yeah, that's gonna be weird. Let me mute the tab. Mute tab.
Meanwhile, like Momo and I have to mute both if we want them open.
Yeah. Activate official.
Sorry, I'm.
Okay.
Since I got the art up, I'm only going to be listening
Oh,
again.
gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying the art.
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out what colors I want because I'm gonna paint. This is gonna be a fully painted shot. It's a panning shot of the ocean. We're gonna pan down the ocean into the ocean floor, and all these fish are going to. Let me try and use my freaking brain.
There you go.
Sorry.
Now
On
you
the
can...
top of the shot, it's going to be very zoomed into the surface of the water, and we're going to see like single-celled organisms. And then as we pan down, they're going to like develop into actual fish.
Very
and once
cool.
we're at the bottom, the fish are on separate layers. They're going to kind of pulled to the side, and we're going to see Cetus, or we're just going to see Cetus's eyes light up in the darkness of the depths of Lolar's ocean.
Nice.
Because they're going to play the rain, it's going to like churn the primordial soup of Lolar's oceans and Dave's going to speed up time in those oceans, so now there's fish, and there you go.
Nice.
I see that. Sorry, I just pulled up your Twitch channel. I see that you were that we were not the only people who got.
No,
yesterday.
Sakan. I did my panel. I was like, when I was first going into the whole like, for those of you who don't know, who didn't watch, I did a panel on writing aromantic and asexual representation in writing, specific to Homestuck, but a lot of it is generally applicable. And I was expecting before SawCon to get like maybe 10 people, because my viewership here is like 5 people is good for me, 6 people is good. So I was like, I'll get like 10 people. That'll be cool. That'll be neat. And then like the night before, it was like 100 people in the server because people were let in on Friday. I was like, yeah, we get like 10, maybe 20 people. That'd be really cool. And then Bucky and Clever did their at Homestuck stream. They were getting like 100 people, and I'm like, oh shit, like maybe I have to be ready for like a larger audience. But then like I was like, oh, I'm up against the Befriendus panel. I'm probably gonna I'll get like 50 people. Now I got like 106 people in the stream. And I got a couple follow notifications. I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, thanks for following. I noticed 2 of them. And then I got off, and I'm like, I wonder how many followers I have. And I looked down, and I said 51. So I actually passed the mark for affiliate by just a little bit. 1 follower over and 0.2 average viewers above what I need. So yeah, I'm a Twitch affiliate now to make those big bucks.
Nice.
I don't do this for money, but I figure why the fuck not?
Right.
Yeah, and like I had a point with this. I don't remember what it was. I
think I interrupted you.
It's
helped
fine.
A lot of people promote themselves, and that's been very good because the way that things are structured right now, it's very hard to break through, and people gotta eat. And I want to see more people build their platforms lately, because there are some new pushes in the Homestuck zeitgeist to be more cognizant of the political issues of our day. So I think Second HomeCon is doing a lot of good.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of conversations lately about the idea of how art in general works into the idea of leftism, the idea of revolution. Like, what does it mean to make revolutionary art or art for the masses? And also like how that plays in the idea of complete liberation, where you're not focusing just on like liberation based on class. You're focusing on liberation based on everything. And one of the things about the New Game Plus project that we're working on, which again, Bucky is a director for the project and one of the writers. Momo and I are both writers, and Momo is probably going to be doing art for it because they do
I'm really excited to do some environment design, and I want to even do a little bit of music maybe.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'm very much focused on writing. I do a little bit of art, but I mean, I'm not a fantastic artist, and I don't have the ethic to do like production art. I just draw fun little things sometimes. Um,
Yeah, I did some like okay cute art for one of our like a short visual novel project that I
right,
was doing for funsies, but I don't
right,
think that that's one that I would like release. It's just like it was just for fun and because I'm trying to improve my art. That was
exactly.
actually something I was also excited about SockCon for. Is like now I have a list of people of artists who are over
Mm-hmm.
the age of 18 because you have to be over 18 to get a SockCon art panel.
Right.
Same with speaking panels, I think, but
I believe
or
so. Yes.
artist alley slot rather. But now I have a list of artists who all were at SockCon who are all Homestuck artists, and I knowing Crow, like I don't think Crow and the SockCon team would have rejected people for not being for being like white cishet people. I don't think that's how Crow rolls, but I do know that Crow probably curated a pretty diverse list of
Uh,
artists and
yeah, I'm
panelists.
sure they did. And
Yeah,
So
and
and
that
I
especially
can
for
also
HomeCon.
like if like, they don't want to do the art, they probably know somebody who might be willing to take that commission.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's such a good
exactly.
resource.
And
Walking through that artist alley felt like doing it at a real
that
convention.
is
It
so
was
cool.
so fun. I grabbed a pin,
Nice.
just because I don't have a lot of things I need to commission right now, but I bought some merch and I was just like, oh, look at all these
I
people and you can go follow them. And I was so
yeah.
surprised by how much it felt like a real convention.
It did, and like our the mods actually, we were all on voice chat when we were like on duty. So we had a singular voice chat channel for the mods, and it was like the actual convention, like organizers being on walkie talkies. So we didn't
It's
have to
so
be like,
cool.
tagging each other. We'd just be like, hey, can you watch chat A? Hey, they're starting to get a little weird here. Can you like keep an eye on it? Yeah,
Okay.
they're still talking about cheese in chat C. Yup, they're good. They're just still talking about cheese.
God, yeah, I saw that. I was also wondering because because we were panelists, so we were in the convention server the night before,
Yeah,
and I saw the mod chat like light up when a bunch of people were doing pre-con stuff, and then I saw
yep.
that whole section vanish from what I could see. I was like, aha, they hit it for secret
Yeah,
reasons.
it was
But
our
smart
like
enough. Just
walkie-talkie network basically.
yeah, a lot of good decisions went into
Yeah,
how the whole
it
thing was
was very
run.
well
Yeah.
coordinated, and so one of the things that I
Finally,
really
something good in this fandom.
yeah,
Oh
right.
my.
One of the things I really liked seeing is a lot of diversity in terms of panels and what's being talked about, and I'm seeing more of a push to talk about like real things, like to introduce politics into it, to talk about like using this as a framework to talk about actual issues because like fiction is weird. Like you don't have to have like this gritty realism to talk about a serious issue. You could make fan fiction that talks about something that's genuine. And I kind of double back to what I think I was trying to say before is that the whole New Game Plus project that we're working on is like it's very explicitly political, obviously. And it also has a very diverse creative team. Even now, we only have a few people so far because we're taking applications. But the group of people that started this is, it's we have trans femme and non-binary people. We have people of color. We have a lot of different like life experiences. Um, so we live in all different areas. We have obviously different backgrounds. We're all different ages. You have to be at least 18 to be part of the project, but we have people ranging from like, I don't know, early 20s, I would say, to late 30s. Let's be honest. That's where I'm at
Yeah,
now.
and more than just that, it's all people that we know at a level of we know what their analysis is. Like
Right,
we actually know the substance of their political
right.
analysis. So you meet the demographic requirements, but then on the other hand, there's still work to do after that.
Yeah.
So and I
Yeah.
remember at the very at Naked Bee's panel,
Mm-hmm.
Naked Bee mentioned that the fan fiction that they really like to read is the stuff where people write the characters that they love in the situations that they experience in real life. So like their work as a deep sea fisher person or
Right,
whatever.
right.
So for everyone involved, this is not some abstract concept. and that's why it permeates, you know, real life. So you have to include it in art, and you can't. So being out at these places, humor and joy have found their place in it. It's
Yeah.
it's not something that you can do all the time, because there can be a liberal tendency to lean towards like love and joy and happiness,
Right.
when that won't solve the problem. But there is a place for, you know, humor, love, and joy, because we have to, this is part of everyone's complete life as a human being.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we're not. That's the thing. Like I think part of the issue is that this country has a lot of really like super intense like anti-communist propaganda where it's like, oh yeah, the Soviet Union or China or whatever. It's like, okay, first of all, those were not communist countries. Maybe they started as communist countries, but
Yeah,
they
state
sure
capitalism.
weren't. Right. And it's like, and also the idea that those are like joyless hellscapes is also, you know, kind of pick one, nationalist slash racist, depending on the country.
And on the flip side, there's like I think like to use Cuba in particular as an
Mhm.
example, Cuba's been in the like has been in the zeitgeist, I guess, has been around Twitter as like, hey, look at all this like neat shit Cuba's doing.
Yeah.
Cuba also has a huge racism issue, and a lot of those things
Uh
that Cuba
huh.
has only apply to white people. Like the
Exactly.
literacy rate for Black people is lower, the availability for Black people is lower, and like I have this big document open. I'm actually taking notes in as we're talking, called "I Want It to Be Easy to Imagine a Better World," that
Yeah.
like began in a conversation we started last night. But like I the function of art isn't like I like you're right, social realism isn't exactly what we're going for, because we're not trying to document things as they are.
Right.
We are trying to speculate. Like I have a list of guiding questions for this game, and one of them is like, what's the genre? It's like one of the first questions, and it's speculative science fiction
Right.
specifically. Like I one of my favorite college courses I took, I loved it so much I did an extra semester of an independent study looking more into these sort of pieces of media and video games, but it was on utopian and dystopian fiction.
Hmm.
And a lot of the inspirations for this game come from that class, as much as like my own research into
Right.
utopian literature after that. Because part of the reason was my professor did take the time to expose us to diverse dystopias and utopias,
Right.
about a short story about a world where Black people are insulated in these like walled cities where they are tasked with preserving Black culture but never creating new culture. Or
Mm.
a story about or like Octavia Butler's entire Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talent series,
Right.
Walk Away, one of my favorite books. It has some queer trans characters in it. I have my issues with it, but like just the idea that we cannot forge a better world unless we're thinking about what that looks like.
Right.
And one of the ways to kind of quote unquote test that is in fiction. Fiction is a testing ground, especially collaborative fiction, especially like I'd say role playing, the
Hello?
sort of
Oh,
collaborative
there we
fiction where we all get to sit down and say, hey, what would we like to see?
go.
And
Right.
then we hash out those ideas together. That's I think that the function of art in that case is like not just to have nonfiction works where we question our current state, but fictional works where we specifically juxtapose. That's what I know I'm rambling a little bit. That's
That's all right.
what dystopia, the function of dystopia is, and what my professor kept looping back and back to, and having us identify first: defamiliarization of the familiar.
Mm.
How do you juxtapose the current place we are in next to something hypothetical to shine a mirror back on our current state? I mean,
Right.
like Black Mirror. I just said the tagline of Black Mirror, the TV show.
Right.
Except for our work's gonna be like about something other than what if your phone was bad?
Yeah. Black
It's gonna
Mirror
be more
is
like
yeah.
like Mirror. Black Mirror in particular is asking like, hey, what if all the things that are currently in place just went a little bit further forward into like something unsettling and creepy?
Right.
And our question is, if I can actually read the plot summary of
Go
it's
for it.
like a short paragraph
Yeah,
of what
yeah,
we're
yeah.
aiming at. 1 year after the gods returned to Earthsea, A group of consort social workers are tasked with helping each of the gods enter their new society. The consorts have to help each of them find a role they can fill. Not a job, just what services they're able to offer that will fulfill them and their society. While the world the players started accelerating 5,000 years ago began with ideas of a great democratic society, the world they have entered is egalitarian, just, and anarcho-communist. I picked those words specifically. It's a lot to adjust to, with much of what was familiar entirely stripped away. A lot of the players end up finding that they have better lives when they discover new people. Others band together and find support with each other. Where will their journey take them? Find out in New Game Plus.
Fuck yes, because everything you said, there's that famous quote, "It is easier to imagine an apocalypse than a world without capitalism." And that, I think, is a very real obstacle that we have to contend with as leftists. We have to give people the ability to imagine a world without communism.
Yeah.
Because right now,
we spent years imagining a Homestuck apocalypse. I think we can imagine a Homestuck utopia.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
And like I had a lot of like thoughts about this stuff because, you know, I went through the experience last night of like I had a good experience with SockCon. It was a good day, a lot of like really positive stuff. I got to see a lot of people that like I care about give presentations that were really good and like gave me a lot of good feelings about like where this as a fandom is going and a community, because we're not like, this is not an abstract thing. We're a group of people and we're all creating things that mean something to us. So it's not like, oh, it's just a bunch of Homestuck shit. It's like, yeah, okay, that's the fandom we're a part of, but we're also a community of people. And then like, you know, getting the messages that I got, and like I had a lot of feelings initially about like, oh shit, like I should have been out there. But then it's like, okay, but what if I'd been out there? Like there would have been another video of a man getting shot. And I wouldn't have been able to stop it. Like no one could have stopped it. This dude just like drove into the crowd and started shooting. You know, no one expected it. No one was ready for it. And like once it happened so fast. Like I saw the video of it and it's just like it happens within like 30 seconds. So like, okay, yeah, I guess I could have been out there taking video and that would have been something. But like I wasn't, because I had other things to do, because I'm a human that has a life. But I got to thinking about like, so what does that mean? Like in terms of what do I do as a person? Like what do I do as a creator? What do I do as someone who believes in the revolution? Because you're not always out there fighting. Like that's not a thing anyone can sustain. And like, why do I care about all this like Homestuck bullshit? And, you know, I was thinking that, again, going back to the idea of what art is and what it represents and what it means to people, it's like it gives me a way to envision a world where this stuff works. You know, like Bucky was saying, it's really easy to envision this apocalypse. It's really easy to envision bad things because we're living in the middle of them right now. Like,
and we've been programmed with propaganda to believe that the only alternative to capitalism is oblivion.
Right. Like it's not hard to imagine a vicious, you know, police state, because that's what we're in the middle of. Like all we have to do is look out our windows. Like just like, especially with all the protests happening, like all you need to do is look at what's happening in the real world. Like that's a police state. That's what it looks like.
What it is. Like it's really happening.
What does it look
right
like
now
when companies own, you know, 90% of the world? What we're living in right now. Like there's like 4 companies that own everything. Like that's what this looks like. Like we are in the cyberpunk hellscape corporate mega city world. We don't have technology we can plug directly into our brains, but like we've got a lot of like super high tech stuff and a corporate dystopia. Like we're already living that.
And like the response to that isn't like, I'm tired, I don't want to think about it anymore.
Right.
It's, I'm tired of this, I would like to imagine not this, and maybe start pushing us towards not this.
Exactly, because like I'm out there as much as I can be to try to help however I can. I do work in independent media to try to bring out stories that aren't getting focused on, to try to give voice to people, to try to show the struggle of the masses. I can't do that all the time, like physically, mentally, just opportunistically. There's not the opportunity to be doing that full time. It's not my full time job, but when I'm not doing that, like I still have a lot of time where it's like, what am I going to do with my life? I love the Homestuck community. I love the Homestuck as a framework. Um, and I could write like nonsense that's just unimportant, or I could try to bake some of my philosophy and my political beliefs and what I believe is right into the work that I do. Like I do that already with my fan work. Like if you read anything I've written, it's very transparently like it's either about social issues or it's about political issues or both. And I'm not trying to be unclear about that. I don't want it to be like, what did the author mean by that? Was she really trying to say this? Like, no, I want it to be pretty obvious, like that, like the basic themes. You debate about the details and like the specific meaning to the characters, but like the overall themes, I don't want my work to be vague about that. Like, the last major work I wrote was very, very transparently a critique of neoliberalism and imperialism. It's not even a little bit vague about that. Um, and like one of the things I love about the New Game Plus idea is that we're very explicitly saying, okay, here's a society that's functioning. Like this is something that was built up. It had 5,000 years built on top of the existing framework of whatever resources in all these different groups of people. And they were able to figure out in this 5,000 years how to make things work in a way that was egalitarian. And now you've got people that are coming in from two very dysfunctional societies, that are very different from each other, but are both pretty fucked up. And they have to kind of like figure out how they fit into this egalitarian society. And I really like that as a concept. I'm not going to say whose route I'm writing, but the route I'm working on deals with a lot of issues of like gender and fitting into society, like finding a group of people that can accept you. It deals with like how the future generations are taught and raised. It deals a little bit with leisure, not as much as some of the other routes, but a little bit, and how that plays into community. So there's a lot of interconnected themes, and some of it is coming from stuff that I've directly been through, and some of it's coming from things that I would like to be the case one day. Like we're not living in a communist society, we sure as shit are not, and I don't know if I'll still be alive when that is made reality, but I sure do hope so, and I'm going to keep working for it because I don't know. I don't feel like just saying, "Yeah, I guess capitalism is fine," because it's not. It's horrible and it hurts people, and I'm tired of that.
Yeah. I think like I think this is also an opportunity to like we've been talking a bit about like different levels of technology that might be available, and I think some of
Right.
them are going to appear anachronistic to the player in both directions. Where like I think one of my notes is like Jade might be baffled by some of the advanced technology, but also in another place I also put that they're going to be using like a manual printing press. So like there's
Right.
going to be a variety of I picked Jade because she's a scientist and she's already very well versed in high tech stuff.
Right.
But she or the like the setting is anachronistic partially because like some of our quote unquote advanced technology, like 3D printing, has been around since the 70s, but we only got it recently because the patent ran out. Or like there's just like capitalism does not in fact breed innovation, and what is innovation to like act to interpret Darwin correctly, survival of the fittest doesn't mean survival of the strongest, it means survival of the most suited to the situation. So our
Right.
technology would evolve as is most suited to a situation. And I think addressing the question of automation is going to be interesting because
Mm.
we have essentially solved the scarcity issue in Earth C by saying ectobiology and alchemization both exist, and
Right.
that's something that Walkaway does. Walkaway explicitly takes place in a post scarcity world because any material can be reclaimed and like uh, put into a 3D printer material extruder and then used to 3D print stuff. So they're like, scarcity, never knew her.
Right.
But we've kind of also done something similar, but where's I? Oh, technology. Like we're gonna need to present different technological solutions to the idea of like automation.
Right.
How do people work and do jobs? Because there's still people want to do things. People want to do labor, as it turns out. They just don't want to do useless labor.
Right, exactly. That's one of the key. So that's a discussion I've had a lot because I'm mostly anarcho-communist. I have some MLM type beliefs as far as like structure and organization go, and I work with a lot of MLM folks. So it's like the combination of anarchism and scientific socialism, where there's a lot of people that get into anarchist philosophy and they're not. I think when they're not familiar with it, it's like, oh, I don't really get this. Like, how does it work? How do we get things done? We just kind of all do what we want. It's like, no, not really, no. And it's like, and it's decentralized, which is hard. It's like decentralized organization is not an easy thing to do. But like, there's a lot of interesting discussions to be had about like, how do we see things like productivity and work now under capitalism, where we're always trying to maximize profit. We're trying to maximize production in a way that secures profit for capital. We're not trying to maximize distribution to people that need it. We're not trying to maximize efficiency in the sense of like reducing waste. We're trying to maximize the profit margin. And like things like automation, right now we see them as being something that's geared towards capitalist production. But under a communist system, you're trying to maximize distribution to the masses. You're trying to maximize efficiency for the purposes of making sure that everyone gets what they need with the least amount of resources used. So it's a very different approach. And then when we're bringing in the technological landscape where we have the human technology, but also we have these other races from the Homestuck world. We've got Alternians who have a very kind of like biotech aesthetic. We've got the Carapacians who have whatever you want to make up because they're so not developed in the comic.
They have whatever Prospit and Durst have access to, which is a wide variety of technology. But we do know that it does include flying battleships.
Yeah.
Like some of the ectobiological recombination stuff in the Veil, and like the word drone gorg just kind of popped into my head. I can't remember if that's a problem sleuth or a car cat goes to a convention joke, but like it's there.
Remember.
I would just like to give it to you guys.
Yeah.
But that's also like I also won't reveal who my route is, but like part of what I'm currently addressing is like, all right, if my main character ends up working at a factory, what does that mean? What are they doing in the factory? What and then because I like the bread book, what's the relationship between this factory and the surrounding countryside? Like there is no way that a city that a factory is in can exist without like is this city processing goods and then returning them to the countryside? What are they exchanging? Presumably they're doing this on an exchange basis. So is it like, here's as much produce and raw materials as you need and we'll pick up the processed materials? How do they exchange it? Are they using containers to exchange these things so that there's less waste? There's all sorts of different questions that you can dig into here. The answer to that, by the way, is of course yes. But
yeah, there's lots of
presenting these things as if they're hypothetical when actually we know exactly what they are.
Right. It's very there's a lot of very interesting topics to be talked about as far as like how you reconceptualize things like production or creation and like I know we've got routes that are dealing with creativity and leisure and like what does that mean under communism? Because again, the anti-communist propaganda that our country loves so very, very much is always like you're living in a communist country and you're in this like hellscape where you work in the factory for 20 hours and you go home and you sleep on a rock for 4 hours and like it's a weird like it's propaganda and it's bullshit. And again, countries that aren't really communist either, so that's cool. But like how does that actually work where like yeah, how much is required to produce what society needs? How much work is required to make sure everything functions? What roles are there? Like all the roles that only exist because they serve capitalist structure, like all the financial and insurance and all that other things where they're purely there to support capitalism and for
God,
no other reason.
insurance.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
As someone who works in
Like,
that industry, it's fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
yeah, there's no money. Like, there's no
Right.
money.
Right.
There's no money. There's no boon dollars. Like, boon
Boon
dollars
dollars.
will have come through. But like, I've started rereading Act 6,
Mhm.
just because, like, I don't know, I got caught up in February 2012. I want to say, I remember sitting at my kitchen counter and reading one of the Trickster updates and like finally clicking the next button. It was just more like, let's run in a circle around the fucking altimeter again.
Oh, the
There's like
trickster
2
arc.
pages.
Oh my god.
Update reader hours. But no,
Yeah.
I'm nostalgic for Act 6 because I pored over every fucking page of Act 6 and read it over and over and over and over again. So that's where I am as a person.
Mhm.
But the like Jane mentions in the beginning of her route, or not her route, her introduction, the boon dollars are like a joke currency that the Betty Crocker Corporation made up,
Right.
and like they play more into the game later, but it's just like a jokey fun time thing. And like I'm kind of wondering if that's not what like boon dollars and like the concept of a currency sort of turn into, like, or if the concept of exchanging
lots
a
of ideas.
middleman is for what you're trading is just gone.
Yeah, that's a really interesting conversation to have, and again, because we've all been raised in this system where you see things like money as being just innate, and like,
Yeah, but they're not. Because, like, think about it. You go,
right,
you go down to the Rite Aid or whatever, and you grab a broom and you grab a lemonade, like I did the other day, and then you put your little plastic card into the thing that gives
Mhm.
them the dollars. But those are all like symbolic
Right.
of your participation in the means of production.
right,
But your participation in the means of production are still going to exist. They're just going to be controlled democratically. You're still going to go down to the not the Rite Aid and still grab your broom and your lemonade. And you have to ask a person like, "Hi, I need a broom and a lemonade, please." And they'll be like, "That
Right.
sounds reasonable. Here you go." Because like your access to resources is also part of that cycle. So,
right.
but like now you could go down to the Rite Aid and be like, "I need 40 brooms and all the lemonades, please." If you're a capitalist, and then you sell those brooms and lemonades like for a markup, you
Right.
can't do that here. Right?
Exactly.
Because like if you go to the commissary and you're like, hey, I need all of your brooms and lemonade, they're like, oh sweet, are you here to take them to like another location that needs the supplies? And you're like, no, I just want them. And they're like, so are you going to distribute them to other people? And they're like, no, I just want. And you're like, no, I just want them. And then like, what? Like at that point, I mean, I guess you can, because like I probably will.
You can
but like, what's the point? Like, what are
Right.
you trying to do here? This is for everybody, and that's where the tragedy of the commons kind of dissolves. It's like, I don't believe that like if there's no incentive to to corner the market on the brooms and lemonades, then you don't need to take them from.
You could literally
everybody.
write, or whoever's writing Jane could literally write Jane trying to do this. Like, I'm going to go to this local and get these assets, and then start and then that's she finds out that's not how it works.
Right.
But
Yeah,
very,
that's
very cool.
that's another thing, because we're conditioned to think of things like resale, where it's like, oh, you get the things so you could sell them back for less money, and that makes the money. And it's like that's not a thing. You don't do that because you can't, because there's no money, and like resources are controlled just based on like, I guess, just preventing people from doing like hoarding. Like, I want all the brooms and all the lemonade. Like, okay, would you?
I'm so glad I made brooms and lemonade like such a joke.
Would you like to talk to somebody about this desire to hoard brooms and lemonade? Because we can find you someone to talk to about this. Like, It's
You want to work
okay.
in the broom factory?
You're
They're
right.
like, next
Yeah,
door to a
I
lemonade
need to
stand. I
write
think
Right.
this
a
is
sick Jan Nakadile character now, where she is just like so focused on how things work and how you can get in trouble or like make things, I don't know, right? Like this
Right.
character that's aware of what the rules are of the system and how the rules empower the system. So I'm suddenly very very excited for sick Jan Nakadile
Right.
in a communist framework where it's not, oh, we'll both go to jail, but it's something else.
Right.
I'll figure that out. But suddenly I'm excited as hell. I could put like a broom and a lemonade like in her
Yeah.
background.
That's gonna be the
The
representative
in joke.
currency is brooms and lemonade.
Brooms and lemon-
Also that-
oh, because Nakadiles, they can have like boon dollars because they did the stock market as part of like their old like culture a little bit, but
Uh-huh.
it's just there to be like yeah, the joke currency sort
Right.
of. So she has like a framed boon dollar like up on her wall.
It should be whatever the one was that was worth like $1 trillion of the minor ones. I don't remember what they were like, Boon Bucks and something
Yeah.
else. I don't remember what the fuck it was called.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, like that's the thing. Like and then there's the other side of it where it's like, well, how do you prevent people from just like taking everything and like making a little capitalist empire on their, like, you just don't let them do that. Like,
Yeah.
you're not allowed to do that. Like, I wanna make a jet just for myself. Like, no, you
Dude, why do
can't
you need
do
all that
that.
metal? We kind of need that for other community
Like,
projects.
you're just
Two things, I guess. One,
Yeah.
Walkaway kind of addresses that because one of the plots in Walkaway is that like there's like the capitalists are gunning for them. Of course they are. There's like
Right.
they've left a capitalist society
Right.
and capitalist society would like those workers back, please.
right.
But at the same time, there's other competing groups in the larger body of who is a walkaway, because
Right.
who walked away from society, who is a walkaway, could be literally anybody.
Right.
And one of those groups is led by a man who's really invested in the idea of gamification,
Mhm.
and he's
Oh, no.
convinced that if you gamify a society, it will be better.
Uh-huh.
We need a gamer society.
So like
Bucky.
Elon Musk, basically.
Like, Yeah, like we need to keep track
We
of
need
everybody's.
Elon Musk's gamer society, Bucky, is what we need. Can't believe
Right,
I
and
can't
in the
believe you
book,
haven't
it
figured
falls
this
apart.
out.
But like in the book explicitly shows like trying to keep a leaderboard of who's contributing the most
Oh my God.
is still a form
my
of
God.
competition.
Right.
You create a new currency.
Exactly.
And it devolves into arguments, and then those communities fracture and explode. And
Yeah.
it like I think there's a line where like the
Relevant
narrator
to
describes, you can
Homestuck.
see. I know it is a little Homestuck. You can see in the distance, abandoned settlements that used to be led by this organization. There was one big building, and
Mhm.
then like one vertical building, but then a lot of smaller buildings start like kind of spiraling off from the one in the center, and they're all attempts at something grandiose, but they're all unfinished because each person individually tried to go work on their own thing to compete
Right.
with
Like
everybody
the
else.
Minecraft.
Whereas the
Right.
cooperative societies had more cohesive
Yeah.
buildings, and they had some neat technology that went along with that. But like, yeah, there's a way to talk about what money does without actually
Mhm.
calling it
Mhm.
money.
Yeah. And like excuse me, the whole idea of like collectivism versus individualism, and that's like another issue that is very socialized. Like, at least in most capitalist societies, we're conditioned to see individualism as being really important, and like, and the idea that if you're not being individualist, you're like just this cog in a faceless machine. But it's like that's not what individualism means, and that's not what collectivism means. It's like it's not about individualism isn't about being who you are. It's about taking your self-identity and making it literally everything all the time. It's about existing purely to fulfill whatever selfish desires you have and fuck society. And like all these systems that are like, oh well, we'll mitigate that and we'll make it better by like putting these like incentives in place and stuff like that. It's like, or you could remove that as a thing where like, no, you're gonna see you're part of a community. Like you contribute to the community in whatever ways you can and to whatever extent is needed, and the community provides
It's
for
like
you in turn.
you should be like in a collective society, you should be able to walk to the town, like walk down your street to like the town square, and every building, not maybe not every building you walk by, but like if you're an able-bodied person, a lot of the buildings you walk by, you'll get to look at them and say, hey, I helped with the foundations for that house. I
Right.
put the roof on that house. I helped with the chimney. There's a little bit of me in every single one of these houses
Right.
because I helped.
Right.
Like I
Exactly.
specified an able-bodied person because like not everybody's going to contribute by building.
Exactly.
Some people will contribute in other like less explicitly physical ways.
Right.
But like there should be a little bit of you in every part of the society that you can touch, because there will be a little bit of every part of your society in you,
Right.
because they all helped you.
And
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of the reasons that the fan community thing resonates with me is that when it's not being divided up into a bunch of shits that just want to start crap and fight with each other, you see a lot of that where it's like projects are formed where everyone is contributing to some degree, and maybe it's not like a ton of stuff, but you have these large projects that are being created and brought to life and finished. And like one of the key problems is organization, because collectivist organization is difficult, especially for a capitalist society, and especially in an environment where you're basically doing it in your free time. Excuse me. But like when you see projects that actually do have organization, I mean, look at something like Befriend Us, where you've got something that is, I think, more comprehensive than the paid product that it's kind of based on ish or in the style of. And I think part of the reason for that is that, you know, the paid product, for whatever reason, at least to some extent, was, we're going to get this out in this tight timeline, and we're going to do it, I guess, so we can make money off of it, maybe, I don't know, or just to have it out there. And that is going to hurt because, yeah, you're going to rush things. And like, again, capitalism doesn't drive innovation, it drives capitalism.
Right. It's sort of like what I was saying at my panel at the end. There's this weird idea that validation can be found through capital or through the like
Right,
an
right,
officiality or through ownership of the intellectual property.
Right.
But no, validity comes from the actual the actual substance of the work and the analysis. That's
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. And like I think that it's really like that's again a thing in the Homestuck community, because of the weird relationship that we have with the IP that this is a fan for. Like, fandoms are interesting because you've got like I was recently watching the documentary on the furry fandom called The Fandom, and one of the comments that they made I thought was really really cool was that one of the things that makes furry fandom sort of interesting is that, unlike a lot of fandoms, it's not based on a singular intellectual property. It's about this
Yeah.
kind of community sense. And excuse me. And the weird thing about Homestuck is, even though it's based on a singular intellectual property, the nature of Homestuck is such that it kind of isn't. Like it's almost like halfway between the two, where it's like there's a singular work, but there's also so much fan creation and so much contention about the canon work itself that it's like
Oh.
a lot of it is just kind of like, no, you know, fuck it, we're gonna make whatever. It's just kind of using this framework.
That's why. Sorry, something just clicked
No,
for me.
go
That's
for it.
why
I heard you
it's
make a
so.
noise.
That's why the fandom, like, I don't want to say the entire Homestuck fandom is LGBT or queer, because like that's definitely not
Yeah.
true.
Ooh,
But I
no.
think
We experience the ramifications of it not being true pretty frequently,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
um
The
but I
part of
think
the
the
fandom
reason
we
that's
care
so
about.
it's one of those things that's so appealing to queer people is
Mhm.
because of like it to use the actual definition of liminal, to be caught in between things and to be sort of unsettling as a result.
Right.
Homestuck itself, by presenting its meta structure, is caught in between reality and a story. It's caught
Right.
in between authorship and audience. Its whole deal is being caught in between. So like, of course it's appealing to people who feel caught in between places in a lot of
Exactly.
different ways.
I think that's a really good I think that's a really good observation. And like, it's as a fandom, it's a strange thing because you had this relationship with the author that was very odd, like the whole like user input, and then that kind of wasn't a thing anymore, but it still kind of was. And like fan creation was always such a big part of the community from the beginning. It doesn't feel like there's this like big work that you're coming in and you're just making derivatives off of. It kind of feels like you're sort of meshed into this whole community and it's all jumbled up. And like you've got this canon text, but it's almost like, to be weird about it, it's almost like religions where they have this text, but it's kind of like distant in a lot of ways. It's really old and it's very subject to interpretation. So you've got this like collection of official works, and there was a lot of problems with it. It says some pretty racist
That's not
stuff.
weird at all. You are not the first person to make a connection between how fandoms and religions operate.
Yeah.
There's that podcast that I haven't listened to, but I need to. Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, where it's just reading using traditions of like Jewish literary analysis and theology to analyze the relationship between the reader and the text in the case of Harry Potter.
Ooh.
And they just do that for hours upon hours. And it's very interesting. So the connections are real. The relationships that people form with the canon text versus the fandom, it's very analogous to sort of theological sensibility. Our approach to a canon work is almost exactly the same beat for beat as a theological analysis of a religious text.
Yeah, like
isn't, because canon is a Catholic word.
It
like
is,
the canon of Catholicism is where that word stems from. Like that's not.
Yeah, there's also the Jewish concepts of religious canon. Like what is the canon religious text as well?
The specific word is Latin. Yes, the specific word canon is Latin.
A little bitch, and Protestantism sucks, but also I'm still like 1v1 me Catholics.
Yeah.
Politely.
But yeah, like if you think about what we're doing here, like you're right that we're interpreting text and we're taking our own, like we're taking a sacred text and we're saying, hey, what if it benefited our political stance? Because we're being very clear and obvious about the fact that this is a political game. Like, highly political in quotes in our promo work, but like we're taking an explicit
we're not like
stance.
Respecting the integrity of Homestuck.
Right.
Fuck no.
No,
what integrity?
Exactly.
This is communism.
Right.
Homestuck
It's
has
communism
always had,
time.
like, it's always been an ever-evolving piece of media that has multiple art styles and multiple writing styles, and it continually breaks the boundaries of how it presents to you its own media. So it's never, like, even though it's never been by only one person, and it's never felt like it's been by only one person.
Right.
So like to try to take a step back and to say, well, this is a property now that we're trying to sell and market is rife for us to come like harvest that fruit and run away cackling from the garden.
Yeah, because there's some analysis like Homestuck has always been progressive and political, and we don't believe that.
No, not at all.
We believe it can be made to be that.
Yeah, I
don't respect its integrity.
Right.
I don't think it's retroactively, like I think defining. I think like you mentioned this, Jonaya, I think on your panel, but like I think retroactively defining some of these characters as trans is disingenuous to where the author was when he began this work.
I did mention that, and I touched on right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But reclaiming them is perfectly reasonable,
right? And that's
like very good. That's why I fully support June, and I want people who aren't approaching June to maybe consider their hesitance and to always like defer respectfully to the trans women who are invested in June and to celebrate June.
Oh yeah. I talked about that in the panel. I talked about it. I touched on the trans rap issue, and I talked about it in regards to how Jake is written as maybe being aromantic, although I don't think he was written as aromantic. I think that's an incidental reading that aromantic people have, and that's valid. Like, I do that too as an ace person and as a trans person. But, like, I think it's important to consider whether or not that representation was actually written into the text or not. And as far as like, first of all, as far as approaching the work in good faith and saying like, well, okay, I want this work to be more representative, or I want my derivative works to be more representative. How do I do that accurately? And also to look at the author's intent. And like, I'm very big on death of the author. I think that it's once a work is out there, it's fucking out there. And if someone takes it and does something else with it, you don't get to say like, no, 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 you don't get to do that. No, fuck it. Don't publish if you don't want that to happen. But like at the same time, I think it's important if you're going to analyze the work and the universe and take elements of that, you should be aware of what the author's intent was, because that does matter. Like if you're going to say like, oh yeah, this trans rep was like, it was always there. You know, this man had these ideas that he just wasn't good at expressing.
Of Hussey, because we don't actually know him as a person. We don't know if he's just careerist and will agree with whatever interpretation of his work will make him look more progressive. We don't know that, right?
I have no idea.
I don't have a rapport with this guy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've never spoken to Andrew Hussey in my life.
Yeah, because he didn't take any leftist principles of his own volition, so I can't trust him, and I shouldn't trust him as some sort of vanguard for leftism or progressive ideas, because he just never actually demonstrated that. So I think be very, very hesitant to try and do like Homestuck leftism with the brand or with Andrew Hussey, or in solidarity with like the celebrity of Andrew Hussey. I think that's ultimately going to be dangerous for you as an individual.
I agree.
Right. I'm very happy to stay a fan and have these be fan projects, and then move on to my own like lefty endeavors later. But like right now, one of the things that I enjoy is making Homestuck fan content. So I'd like to kind of harness my fan content power and put it towards something I believe in.
Right.
And like, you bet your sweet bippy Homestuck isn't the only fandom I'm involved in. It's the major fandom I'm involved in, but I'm always thinking about other stuff. My podcast is about it's explicitly about talking about other pieces of media.
Yeah. I'm going to drop the link to that in the chat.
I'm the co-host of the podcast called Will It Homestuck. When I'm not holding the right alt key, I'll type, but that'll get all fucky real fast.
Good.
Go to that.
Way.
Yeah,
Clever's
there's that.
Clever has a disease, and it's called always being right.
Yeah.
Clever does have that disease. Yeah. It's a little infuriating to live with, but you get used to it.
Is Clever also a sylph?
No,
because that's sylph disease.
Yeah.
Clever is a witch.
Oh, Clever's a witch. Well, you know, witches are also always right.
We're both witches, but she's a witch of doom and I'm a witch of hope, so that's also fun.
Sorry about hope players, but you're always wrong.
I do. No. I mean, a lot of our podcast is me very confidently. I mean, it's both of us very confidently explaining our points, and the other person flying in with a even better idea with even better justification. We're like, well, shit.
I have a feeling that on the Jessica Jones episode, we're going to have one of the least controversial class spectings ever. I'm going to say that with some degree of confidence. There's one character I think we will not disagree on. Anyway,
I'm excited to do She-Ra.
I'm looking forward to that too.
Looking forward to that. That's gonna be fun.
Actually, I kind of want to talk about like a quick tangent about our approach.
Yeah.
There's so many people who do Homestuck class spec analysis, and so there's always new class spec analysis essays to read on that. Like, don't get me wrong, we started with Optimistic Duelist, and a lot of our stuff. Like, I have an image of Taz's like class spec sort of like class, like specifically how he defines the classes along an axis. But like Esther's Pacifica, who was a panelist on SockCon early in the morning yesterday, her very scientific essay on aspects is phenomenal. I still reference Blade Kind Eyewear sometimes. There's another class spec person on Tumblr who did some great class essays that I've referenced before.
Yeah.
There's like a variety of stuff out there to read and sink your teeth into about what all the classes and aspects mean, that is not limited to just Optimistic Duelist, as good as his work is, that you can kind of dig into and then apply.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm biased because I hang out with Taz, but Taz is good.
No, Taz is good. Like, I like Taz a lot. I'm just saying, like, that's the boon of the Homestuck canon.
Like, you know me. I hear a thing I like. I'm like, I need to show affection right now.
I'm still. I consume a lot of Optimistic Duelists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I almost have the surface of the water painted after like 2 hours.
That's looking really good.
Yeah, it's very iridescent.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think that a lot of this stuff, it's good to take things that you enjoy and then to take that and extend beyond what's already there and into like the idea of speculative fiction, where you're looking at, oh, okay, so like, what can I say with this as a framework? Like, I think that fiction has a lot of power in that respect, and I don't think that that's limited only to, 100% original works of fiction. Like, fiction as a human concept, or storytelling in general, is not something that's like, oh, it's always this, you just summon it out of nowhere. It's like, no, that's not how humans work. Like, we have social traditions, we have our own histories, we have our own thoughts, we have our societies, we have our many, many, many stories. Like, think of a story that you think of as being like, oh, this is so original. It's like, no, you can probably trace it back to something else. You absolutely can. Like, fan fiction doesn't have the same kind of, negative stain that it once did, but that's just another form of that reinterpretation, or taking something and like, oh, I like this, I'm going to use it as a framework to talk about something else. Like, I really like that. I like looking at the characters and how they can represent something. And the thing is, one of the nice things about fan fiction is you're tapping into an existing community, and that's something that is incredibly powerful, because like, original fiction, if you don't have an audience, it takes a lot of time to gain ground. And while you might say, well, okay, I can post this to like a general fiction forum, I can get feedback, that's great. But like, the ability to have this discussion of concepts on a very collective level is important. And so like, one of the nice things about fan works is it's like, we're all kind of coming from the same central point of reference, where it's like, okay, we know these characters, we know kind of like what this universe means, so we can use that as a framework to talk about something. Where an original work, you're also trying to establish sort of your credentials as an author.
Yeah, the push to like always make something original is primarily motivated by capitalism.
I agree.
That you own the intellectual property and
Oh,
you have
yeah.
ownership of it, because
Right.
you have to um in the society we live in, because we live in a
Yeah,
society.
exactly.
Yeah, like the disparaging of fan works is only because they are not being published for money, and because you're edging in on somebody else's intellectual property.
Right.
Like, we didn't dislike fan work until it was seen as something A, womanly and therefore lesser, and B, taking away potential attention and money from somebody else's intellectual property,
Right,
and therefore
this
anti-capitalist.
is why right now with Web 2.0, fandoms are being co-opted by brands and companies
Exactly.
to try and reclaim that
So
capital.
I'm going to talk tangentially about the piece of original work I do, which I'm linking here. So I do a podcast, for if anyone's listening that doesn't know this or watching on stream, called the Alabaster Bible, which is it's original works. It's short fiction, and it's horror themed. It's gothic horror specifically. So I write an original script every month. I do most of the voice acting. I've had I've had a guest, Clever actually, from Will at Homestuck, voiced one of the guests in the latest episode. And I explore a lot of the themes of social and political stuff. I've looked at domestic violence. I've looked at queer identity, or coming out as trans specifically. I've looked at police and state violence, and the upcoming episode is going to go into a little bit more of the kind of like political stuff and political dissidence and state suppression specifically. Less direct police violence and more like state suppression. So I do the same thing I do with fanfic in terms of exploring themes, and it's 100% original, except it's not, because everything that I do is inspired by something else, or inspired by something I've been through, or something. There's no such thing as this like truly original thought. Like, my podcast is very directly inspired by Alice Isn't Dead, which is a podcast that's really good and is a really interesting story that also deals with a lot of political themes in an allegorical way. It's inspired by Old Gods of Appalachia, which is a very Lovecraft inspired, but without the racism, podcast that talks about like the cosmic horror, but in the setting of like sort of rural Appalachia and that like working class experience. So it connects like themes of cosmic horror to themes of working class struggle, which I think is really cool and also very relevant to like communism. I'm inspired by Welcome to Night Vale to a certain extent, like that kind of weird reality stuff. I'm a little bit inspired by good old racist ass H.P. Lovecraft, or rather, the cosmic horror that he popularized, and then was extended by many more less racist people, who didn't just use it as a shorthand for black people
Sorry,
are
art's
scary.
frustrating.
It is frustrating.
Art is frustrating. I'm getting frustrated because it doesn't
So
look how I want it to look, but it's
it
close.
looks really good.
Thank you.
But yeah,
It does
like
look really
even an original work, there's inspiration, there's things that you draw from, even if it's your own personal experience. Like you're not just like creating this brand new, never before thought in your brain, and that's not what art is about, nor what it should be about. It's about interpreting and contextualizing human experience, and like the idea that fan works are like this lesser category is stupid. Like I've read fan fiction that was amazingly brilliant and made me want to create more. And I've read published novels that were just garbage.
Yeah.
I recently I tried to read a Dean Koontz. No, not Dean Koontz. It was a Dean Koontz. No, it was whoever wrote the Hellfire Club or whatever. It's some dude that's like I was like, oh, he's got this kind of like horror noir vein thing. I think would be really interesting, and it's like it's not that good, and it's gross in a lot of ways. Want to become famous? No,
Yeah.
but I would like to block you.
Oh. Who?
We got a spam bot.
Yeah, I
Cool.
see that.
Oh.
I'm in the big leagues now.
Oh boy.
And report
Got him.
for. You got him?
Yep.
Cool. Thank you so much. I think this is a bot account. Submit report. But yeah, like so. It's like just being a published work is not like, oh, this is like. Oh, I really needed those follows.
Oh.
I know you need to get those totally legitimate followers.
Account created 9 hours ago. Okay.
Oh.
Real surprise.
Oh.
Yeah. So like we have this like lionization of original quote unquote content and this demonization of anything that's seen as derivative. And
It's more that individualism
silly.
where you
Yeah,
don't want to
exactly.
be like, I want to be in a community. I want to build something with other
Right,
people. I don't want to
right.
do everything by myself.
Like I love the idea of like I like when people say my stuff is good. Like everyone does. That's normal.
Yeah.
Most people do. There are definitely people that get weirded out by that. But most people find that pleasant. But at the same time, like I don't want to be a brand who's like everyone's
Right.
looking up to me and they're like, oh, you're the greatest, and
Yeah.
and
And
you've
can you
got 14 million Twitter followers and say a lot of really transphobic shit.
can
Um,
you really think that someone purely benefited from that and hasn't like just ended up in weird like
yeah,
parasocial
exactly.
personality that are ultimately toxic for everybody?
Yeah, like I love being part of I love being part of the like the fandom projects that are actually like doing things and working, because it's like you get to create something. You get to be like a person that's like, hey, they did this thing. That's awesome. But also you get to bolster people that are also creating, and you get to help this larger whole come out of this thing. Like I think one of the weirdest things about like modern game development, specifically non-indie game development, is the idea that like this one person is the one behind the game. Like people talk about, like, to use a shitty example, Todd Howard, who is a piece of shit, but
Really? I
yeah,
only know Todd Howard as like a meme man
he's
versus a
like this.
person.
He's the dude
Isn't
that's
that kind of the point, though?
right.
Mm.
He's a fucking meme. He's the guy in charge of Bethesda, who's just a kind of a dick. Um,
Bethany Yezda.
yeah, but he didn't make any of the games. A team
Yeah.
of like 300 people did. And like he's
And
just the dude that puts
he
his name
took
on
over
it.
their IPs
Right,
and started
exactly.
marketing bad like sequels to good games.
Right. And
My
like
goodness.
I love the idea of like the idea of a team that creates something, and it's like it's not, and this is
I'm
this
gonna
is
put
something
on
that bugged me about
some music that's relevant really, really
one of the
quietly.
less great comments I saw about SawCon, was the whole like, oh, Crow's just just promoting their stuff. Like it's just it's the
Oh, are we gonna get into that?
crow
Because are we just gonna
hour.
go off on these people? Because holy
We
shit,
had nothing
right?
to lose but our
We have
change,
nothing to lose
Momo.
but our
Right.
change.
And personally, I think that that's nonsense. Like, a Crow does a lot of like fan projects and a lot of coordinating, but Crow
Crow works their
also,
ass off. All these projects are free for you to
right,
access. Crow's not making money. Crow still works as an essential worker right now. Jesus
right.
Christ.
And also,
Have some class solidarity.
even on top of all that, Crow is
Who cares if
taking
you promo your own shit?
right, and even on
Crow
top
has
of
so
all
much shit to promo because
that,
Crow works so goddamn hard. I'm sorry, I shouldn't
no,
get this
you're
mad,
right.
but
And
Like, also notice a lot of these projects, it's not like Crow's like, oh, and here's a project I do by myself that you should
exactly.
buy for money, and here's a project I do
Yup.
by myself that you should buy for money. It's here's a project that I'm on a team for, that I usually have like a director role and or a small contributing role to,
Yeah.
or something I'm writing one thing for, that a lot of other people are working on, that a lot of marginalized people are working on,
Uh-huh.
that's just cool and neat and like
Yeah.
innovative and filling a
You
niche.
know, one of the things that I thought of when they were doing the Pest Request the John Root premiere, because I did get to listen to a little bit of that, and I saw all of the talk about it, and one of the things that really stood out to me because of how much Crow does a lot to support that project, in terms of like organization, which is important, but what I heard all across the board was how well the two voice actors had done for that route. Like the two people that were putting in, the voice actors and then the editor who did a shitload of work. They're like, these are the people that made this happen. And it's not like, oh, this is my project that I did and you can buy it and here's my thing. Like, what I see from Crow is a lot of like, here's a thing that I'm creating or that I'm organizing, and like all these people are working on it, and like check them out, check out their stuff, like support this project because it's centering people that are working very hard and also a lot of times don't get a voice in fan communities. And I've heard some real just weird ass takes about that, and it's like, no, that's not accurate, and that's stupid, and like that's how having an organizer for a project is good, but a good organizer not only is able to bring everything together and help coordinate things, they're also able to be very like subtle about it, where it's like, hey, look at all the things that my team has done. Because you're not, it's not about, and no one's going to be like, oh, you didn't do shit. Like, people are going to give you credit for doing the work.
yeah, because like we were talking, what good does it actually do you, that cult of personality
Right,
shit?
exactly. Like, if you feel good, like it's normal to feel good that you've like, oh, I helped to bring this together, I helped to do it, but it's not like, oh, you're the only person that does
Yeah.
it.
And I want to be clear, even if Crow was doing this for money, like Validate, which is an amazing project,
Yeah,
so what? That would be fine because people got
exactly.
to eat. People have to engage with capitalism to survive, especially marginalized people who are
Oh yeah.
disenfranchised from participating in the regular means of quote unquote progression through this system.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
to sabotage that at any level is just like untenable.
Yeah, I
Like,
agree.
would
It's
actually the Homestuck fandom would be able to drastically improve if Crow was able to make money off of all of the projects that they are running. Because
Hmm.
she's a fucking powerhouse. All of how many more ideas we would be able to see come to fruition because
Yeah.
because
If we
a
were in
Homestuck
capitalism,
fan of
if it
color
was
has more time and space to make their own
oh
shit.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, if it was
absolutely.
more decentralized and you wouldn't have to sort of engage with all the trappings of capitalism in order to do that, which like there's a lot of dangers in doing it. We've kind of seen that play out with just people trying to do Homestuck too, which I'm also not knocking either.
Right. Right. And it's like it becomes a weird kind of like zero sum game where it's like, oh, well, if you
Hmm.
support this project, then you're taking away from this other project. And it's like,
yeah,
even though that's not true because most of these are free projects, even
That's not true.
Homestuck
The idea of
2.
like endless growth for
Right.
one single project is it's not gonna work. You can't
Right.
meet everyone's needs that way.
Exactly. And like even with Homestuck too, which is like yes, they have a Patreon and they make a little bit of money off of it. And I have some thoughts about utilization of those funds, but that's kind of beyond the scope of what we're talking about. But the bottom line is
Yeah.
it's a free thing to consume for the most part, and like it can coexist alongside other projects. Like my problem is when people start acting like, "Oh, this is the canon work. You can't go against that." Like, why can't you
Yeah,
go
and like
against
the
that?
ask I got, like that weird ask
Oh my
I got
God.
to yeah, it's like why
Yeah,
would anyone give a shit about your worthless fan fiction when there's an
right.
official continuation?
And,
It's
and
like,
like I
because
know one
maybe
of the things about what we're doing with New Game Plus, like, oh well, you've got to engage with the epilogues if you want to continue Homestuck. No, you fucking don't.
no, you
Like, you do
don't.
not have to
You
engage with
really
anything.
don't.
You could read the first 4 pages of Homestuck and be like, hey, I'm gonna take this idea and run with it, and just it's gonna
Yeah,
be something completely different because like there's
yeah.
like one character, but like
Actually, to
yeah,
bounce off of that, I was
yeah,
reading the MSPFA etiquette fan venture work thing that was
yeah,
mentioned
huh,
during
Oh
the
yeah.
MSPFA panel yesterday because I wanted
yep.
to check that out. I'm hoping to maybe help Clever with her fan venture because she's got a really interesting one that she's writing. She has 10,000 words written so far. I'm
Oh, yeah,
really
I
proud
meant
of her.
to. I was gonna beta read that at some point. Yeah,
It's really neat, but I have like the character world building document because I've done some of the character designs and I think that they're really cool.
nice.
But one of the things that the author said was that like having the fan venture be maybe not centered around, but at least feature a lot of humor, particularly in the beginning, especially if you're doing like an original work, is kind of important because that's what hooked people in the beginning was like having an original sense of humor. And I'm like, yeah, that might not necessarily apply to like every single project, but like the originality, like being
If
able
you're
to
yeah,
touch
yeah,
somebody
yeah,
with a
yeah.
fan venture is important, I guess, but at the same time, like, yeah, having it being based on a pre-existing work makes it easier
Do
to.
something to make the audience kind of let their guard down a little bit, give them a reason to kind of come in and spend some
Uh,
time with you, like you're meeting a stranger and you would if you were trying to talk to a stranger. Tell a nice joke to kind of set things
right.
off, make people feel comfortable. And that's kind of the problem right now with some of the ways that Homestuck is trying to engage with its readership is it's not taking that step to make people feel like they're comfortable and accepted in this space. It's all just very you take what you get and this is for your own good. And that's
Oh,
just like,
like,
well,
don't
okay,
read.
okay, sure. I guess you know best, huh? Don't you, Homestuck? Oh wait. Yeah.
Not very fun to engage with. I would
Yeah.
like, I don't
It's
know.
not that
That's,
it's
I mean,
because it's right that not everything can be fun, you know? But also, like, you can't just use that to justify every single possible outcome of your behavior. Yeah, everything can't be fun all the time, but that doesn't
Right,
entitle you to treat people however the fuck you want.
right.
fun is allowed sometimes. Some fun allowed.
Some fun allowed. We have
Some
to.
fun
We
allowed.
still are accountable for how we treat people.
Right.
Like, yes, we have to do the hard work of progressive direct action. Love and kindness, unprincipled love and kindness and happiness is not
It's
going to get us out of
no,
capitalism.
no.
But
Like
Oh,
also, that doesn't mean do whatever the fuck you want to anybody, actually. And people who are in this for that, I think that they're ultimately going to make their lives worse and the lives of people around them worse.
yeah.
I have a YouTube video to plug that I plugged up,
Ooh.
but I'm
Do you like
gonna
my
do it
seaweed,
again.
Bucky?
What?
Do you like my seaweed? I just finished the
I
seaweed.
do. I'm looking at the seaweed.
Seaweed, more like.
Yeah.
Lol.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I get to shut up now. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Actually, I'm gonna BRB real quick for unrelated
All
reasons,
right. Cool.
and you guys can enjoy looking at
Yeah.
that. And I'll be right back.
Very nice seaweed. But yeah, like there's so many like I don't know. There's so many different interconnected things going on, and the idea that like you have to do it this one right way is like is really stupid. And like no, you don't. Like you don't. There's no one right way to engage with things and do things. And I don't like that idea. It's not right.
it's like that's I mean that's kind of the point of the game, right? Like
Right.
if or the new game plus at least is like there is no one right way. There should in fact be an allowance for multiple interpretations, and we're gonna make one of them at least.
Right.
Uh,
Exactly.
and like to kind of I dropped a YouTube link in the Twitch chat and in the YouTube chat because I got both open right now.
Cool.
The this video it's 45 minutes long. It's one of my it's a video I really like personally. It's by it's like Bamundo Lack, I believe is their
Mm-hmm.
channel. They it basically it's called Finally Some Good Fucking Praxis,
Uh-huh.
and it breaks down the three pillars of praxis as this person defines them of constructive, destructive, and defensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's like three different directions that you can approach your IRL implementation of your theory, which is what
Mm-hmm.
praxis is. You can build things up, you can defend things that are built, or you can go after things that need to be taken down.
Right.
And like when whatever that means,
Right.
they being vague on purpose, but like
Right.
like there is going out and protesting, which is important and good and something that still needs to be happening because it's
Right.
it's having good results.
Right.
But there's also supporting the people at those protests. There's making sure that the people who go to those protests like aren't hit with legislation that would hurt them significantly down the line, if not outright like black bagging and arrests.
Right.
There's the things that they are protesting that can to some extent be addressed with legislation, but like the point of legislating some of these issues isn't necessarily like, oh, we'll make some new laws that like address police brutality and then we're done. Hey,
Right.
Momo. We'll like we can keep going after that. We're just like that's just one step in the direction
Right.
of like not
Well,
having police anymore.
yeah,
maybe, police.
that's an interesting topic. Is like we talked about this a lot with the concept of struggle and revolution. Is that the goal should never be these little incremental changes. Like that shouldn't be your end goal. Those are
incrementalists.
Yeah, those are incidental things that will happen along the way, and we will absolutely take them as they come. But that is never the goal. Like the goal is the dismantling of the capitalist system and the full liberation of everyone. And like
incrementalism is like looking at a mountain and saying, "Fuck yeah, I'm gonna work really hard on this one hand grip." Like
right, like I did it
because that's important.
I'm done now. I got that one first grip. Yep, I'm good to go. And like that, and you see that a lot with like reformism and like movements that are like, oh, we'll get the police more training and stuff like that. I was like, no, that's not going to work. That's bullshit. Those are not even half measures. They're nothing measures. And like, but you're right. There's a lot of different elements to praxis, and like being out on the ground protesting is only one small part of it. And like protesting, like you need more than just like being out there and being angry. Like that's really great and it's good energy. But like this is something that came up with. There was a demonstration at the city manager's house, and it was like a lot of great energy, but there was no real organization. And it's like, how are you going to like? You can't be effective if you're just out there and like a few people are loud, because that's really easy for the people with all the systemic power to ignore. The people that push electoralism. It's like that's a good idea. Like I get the idea, I get your energy, but like at the same time, it's really easy to ignore. The people with power can change laws very easily. They can just ignore votes essentially, or they can find loopholes in them to do what they want to do anyway. Or they'll push, the most milk toast pseudo progressive line, and it's like, okay, yeah, you're good now, right? You're all good. Like you have to approach it from a lot of different ways, and also like the idea of creation and making like conceptualizing what could be, or just like conceptualizing the human experience so that you have something that does that. That's not a capitalist nightmare that's trying to make money all the time.
I've learned so much from being out there. Showing up is good. I wish more people were doing it, but it's not enough. You have to be politically literate. You have to be accountable for your behavior, and you have to be willing to make a choice in a situation where someone else is not behaving correctly for what that situation needs. You have to be accountable to that, because it might be a mistake, because you're having to make these choices in 30 seconds while you're about to get tear gassed.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
And then
exactly.
you have to stand by that after, or decide, no, I made the wrong choice, and then change your behavior. There's just so much. You can't just show up. It's not just going to be a nice, oh, let's just go and wave our sign, and then we'll fix racism. No,
Right.
this is a fucking fight, and you have to be strategic. You have to be very intentional.
Right.
You have to be willing to
Exactly.
listen to leaders, and you have to be like willing to swallow your pride in that extent. If you're doing like explicit
Yeah. In
action, you have to be like
Seattle,
ready to
yeah,
be
we
hurt.
don't have
Right.
leaders, we have demands. We've done that intentionally because the idea of like there's going to be, because what the mayor has been trying to do is create within the movement figureheads that then that she knows are very liberal
Oh
or
yeah.
very inexperienced, that she can then kind of
Uh,
manipulate and use in the situation. So the
Yeah.
idea that there's going to be a leader that's going to tell you what to do when you go to a protest, it would be nice sometimes if we always had very experienced, very intelligent, capable people. Not always, because we are in a pandemic right now. So a
Right.
lot of those community elders, those experienced people, cannot, for their own health and safety, participate. So now it's suddenly on a lot of these young people to learn a ton of shit that, our society does not prepare you to know.
Right. And that
Um,
so
yeah,
that's
so yeah,
yeah.
I'm so sorry, but like
No, that's all
lateral
right.
organization and chaos and true like anarchist action, it's very important right now that people get literate in that so they
Yeah.
understand what's going to happen to them when they go
I
out there.
I think that's one of the areas where the Marxist approach works really well because a lot of what the emphasis there is that you do have leadership, but the leadership is not a singular person that's always the same. The leadership is whoever's in charge right now. So
Hmm.
there's more structure and it's still lateral for the most part, but there's like, okay, we're going to be at, we're going to this agitation. This is the person that's in charge of the agitation. The other people are reporting to them, not like they're their boss, but like, okay, this is the person that's directing everything. Or like you'll be in charge of like, okay, you're in charge of media. You're the one that's kind of coordinating that. So you rotate out and the idea is that everyone kind of trains to do a few different things. Um, so that ultimately everyone at least should be at least somewhat proficient in like general leadership, like general agitation, the ability to explain the political line. Like you should have that kind of general skill set, and that way, like you can have organization on the ground where it's important, but there's no one that you can target and be like, oh, well, take out the leader, and then they're powerless.
Exactly,
One of the
exactly.
issues in one of the issues in Austin, because our city is very like it's very big on like arts and the arts community, and it's also got a big culture of like of gentrification. Um, you have these like this tendency to have these like artist collectives, or like they're based around like one or two people, or they're like a band, like the activist group that's
Oh
basically
my,
just like four
yeah.
people that's a band, and
Yeah.
then like
So some real relevant shit happened in Seattle about that, I'll tell
yeah,
you.
and like, again, great energy, but like you don't want an organization that's fragmented and just like out there just doing their own thing. They should be part of that collective of the masses. And also, you don't want a figurehead. You don't want it to be like, "Oh, this is the blah blah blah, this is my deal." Because then you've just got you've got a person that can be targeted either to get removed or that can be targeted to be corrupted in some way. Like we had a big issue where one of the people that was kind of like the leader for one of the activist groups was very big on talking to the cops and like talking to
Oh
right wing
god.
people, and like
Mhm.
they've been so some of the more radical groups have been engaging in struggle with him to try to get him to back down on that. And we
Mhm.
have gotten to the point where he's like, okay, I won't talk to the cops anymore. So we're like cautiously optimistic about that. But just like in general, that shouldn't be. You can't have like unprincipled behavior where you're just like, oh, I'll just
Exactly.
I'll just do whatever. Like you do need people that are, excuse me, that are able
And not
to kind of
everyone's equipped to
lead.
do that. Some people
No,
like yeah, when you're
no,
in
that's
social situations, it can be hard to control every
oh
single
yeah,
aspect of your behavior because like you're constantly having to decide, okay, am I going to approach this person in good faith? I don't
uh
really
huh,
know them for a
right,
second, and then
exactly,
maybe that can be the wrong choice and before you know what's going on. I learned that the hard way.
yeah.
So yeah.
And like it's very important like for direct action it's very important because division is going to get people hurt. Like I don't know. I mean, the situation last night was very unusual because this dude just sort of drove up and shot people. Um, But we've had issues in the past where like there was disagreement about a course of action, and then it got people arrested. Like we had one case where there was a disagreement on the ground about whether or not it would be appropriate to march, and we'd seen the police starting to use isolation and grab tactics, where they're using these vans, and like that's something where you need a lot of people sticking together to protect your fellow protesters, and that wasn't happening. Like we had maybe 40, 50 people at most, and then it dwindled down, and the police came up and grabbed someone and drove off. And like that's an intimidation tactic on their part, but like you have to be ready to counter that. And one of the issues was there wasn't really any good leadership on the ground. It was just like, hey, we think we should march. No, we don't think we should march. We're going to march. And then, the other people go along with that because they don't want those people to be by themselves. But like that kind of unprincipled action, just like the unprincipled unity as a concept, like, oh, we should all be together and all the time and never disagree with each other. It's like, no, that's not a good approach. Like you need to be willing to engage in struggle. It's like, oh, you're doing something bad. Like we need to talk about this. Like we need to come to a point of unity that's based on actual like reasoning, not based on like, oh, well, I don't like you, or I don't want to do this. Like that's not a principled approach. And that's going to get people hurt. It has gotten people hurt. And it also, it's important as far as like, I don't think unprincipled left unity is a good goal either.
Exactly.
Like that's a way to get everything fragmented and not achieve these goals. Like you should be able to come together on at least the core political line.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Or it makes it too easy for the system to just suppress everything. I mean, if you have no ground, then whatever. The masses. If the masses are just going along with a kind of like a liberal line or a conservative line, then it's very easy to suppress dissent because you just kind of marginalize the groups and they're gone. But yeah, it's a lot, and obviously like the Homestuck fandom is not the be all and end all of anything, but it's interesting the ways that you can see like echoes of some of this in like a fandom community, where you get these like weird disagreements about stuff and like these very like unprincipled attacks on people. And then of course that causes problems because it divides people up and it hurts people, people that are victims of harassment or, bullying or whatever because of, oh, you don't like this character. Like that's some real bullshit.
Yeah, if you fail to, we've mentioned before, if you fail to be critical of Homestuck to the extent that you need to be critical of it, you will unintentionally keep propagating these dangerous social elements that
absolutely
the work has kind of represented in its values, and that will end up with some of the very nasty things we've seen happen, where people are turned into scapegoats, because it's convenient for the community to do that instead of starting to look at the big systemic issues that have put that person in that situation to begin with. So that's why I refuse. That's why I plainly refuse to make scapegoats out of certain people that I have been pushed to do that for. And I know that may unfortunately be kind of uncomfortable if I don't buy into that, but I think it's important not to do it because I care about people. I don't want them to get hurt when I know what it's actually in service of, and what it's in service of is not something that's valuable.
Yeah.
So yeah. Sorry to go off.
I mean, no, it's fine. Like
that's cool.
I don't know. That's one of the exciting things about fan works, at least for me, is like they're not just the multiple interpretations, but like getting to build off of it. Because like that, we were talking about how works necessarily evolve from other works, but like that's not a bad thing. Once you figure that out, you kind of like, you can't really approach stories and from a formulaic perspective, because then you start making the same stories over and over again. You end up with the state of Hollywood right now.
Right, exactly.
But like, you can look at the way other stories are told and think about what you can think about what you liked about it, and you can think about what really unsettled you and made you uncomfortable about it, and then you can think about what didn't make you uncomfortable about it and why it didn't make you uncomfortable and why it might make other people uncomfortable.
Right.
And there's a million other questions and ways you can respond to works, and then you can go on and make your own works about how you responded to those
Right.
and different ways people can respond to works, and that just like then you end up contributing to the cycle of like of new and interesting and cool ideas and stories, and that's
Right.
how we end up with. I mean, that's how we got something like She-Ra. That's how we
Right.
got something like Steven Universe. That's how we get Homestuck too.
Yeah.
And like, I also don't want to knock that project because it's contending with a lot of inheritance.
Right.
Yeah, you can't just bash the people who are working on Homestuck 2 when
No.
they're just a product of the framework that Homestuck
So-
has established. You have to actually criticize
Right.
the framework.
To be real direct about it, I think the biggest problem with Homestuck 2 is that it tries to hew too closely to the pattern that was established by Homestuck and then made worse by the epilogue, so that it's like there's this very like, I don't want to say necessarily bad faith because I don't actually know that for sure, but it feels very bad faith reading it, and it feels like Homestuck 2 is just like, okay, we're going to continue this trajectory. And I think that it leans so heavily into that it suffers for what it could be because of what it is. But
And
like,
what sucks is that
yeah.
that hurts the people who are the people who are work, at least of what I know, are extremely genuine people.
Right.
Do not have bad intentions for the most part of,
Right.
of who I know.
Right.
So it sucks that it then affects them.
I
They're
agree.
people.
Yeah. And like, one of the things about fan works is that even though you're working within an existing framework, you're also saying something new, and you're saying something hopefully that's genuine in some way. So like, one of the things I found really interesting, from my perspective, was when I started, before all the protests started up, I was participating in a writing group, and so the way we would do it is everyone would read their stories and people would talk about it. And so I was the only person in the group that was writing Homestuck fanfic. Not the only fanfic writer, but one of like two. And so most of these people are they're writers. They're mostly writing original fiction. A couple of them have been published. One of them makes part of her living off of it. And I was reading Heir to the Listless, which is my June coming out fic. And one of the things that really got me was like, I read it and I'm like, hey, this is gonna, I thought it was good. I'm like, yeah, they'll probably enjoy it, but it'll be like, it'll go over their heads and they'll be like, what the fuck is this shit? And one of the things I really liked was like, their comments were like, this is really good. Like, I have a really good sense of the characters. I don't feel like I need to have read the original work. Like, oh yeah, like a couple of the terms were like, what is that? I don't know what that is. But like, the ability to kind of gloss over that, and it's like, oh, you derive meaning from something. Like, the way that I wrote the characters came across. The struggle that I was writing, between the Roxy and, June before she's June, and like the depression and how that relates to gender dysphoria, and like that came across to people that had literally never read a word of Homestuck. And that was really interesting. It got me thinking that, you're, even as a fan creator, you're still creating something that means something. Like, it's not just like, oh, it's more Homestuck. Like, I think that, oh, it's more Homestuck is like a really simplistic way to look at things. And if that's genuinely what you're doing, I feel like your work is going to be less than it could be. Like, I liked seeing the thought process behind Act 8. And one of the reasons I really like that you do like these streams and stuff, and I really enjoyed your panel, was that you're talking about like, oh, I'm engaging with this in a purposeful way. Like, I know what I'm doing. Like, I'm not just kind of making more Homestuck. I'm like, these are the themes I want to explore. These are the problems I have with the original work. Like, the fact that you were like talking about right in the intermission where you're talking about and I know you didn't
Why
talk,
it's such a struggle
right,
right
like
now.
you didn't talk a lot about it in your panel, I know, but we've talked about it before, where it's like, with all of this stuff that's happening in the fandom, and it's like you want to make sure that you're engaging with this in a way that's not like disingenuous.
Exactly.
Like you're not just like shitting on somebody in like I have issues with some of the people in the Homestuck fandom. I have issues with people who have been on the official team as like I don't feel like you're behaving in good faith. But at the same time, the response to that can't just be like, well, fuck you, you're just an asshole as a person.
Yeah.
Like engaging with the work is about saying, well, these are the problems I have, and here's why. Um, and it's good to be deliberate about that. Like, it's it's interesting to see that process, and I think that's something that's really it's really unique to fandom spaces because you have this sort of the burden of the existing canon work, and to what extent are you going to say, well, I'm going to try to deal with that, address it, fix it, ignore it, rewrite it. Like I love seeing AUs and writing them because it's always interesting to see what elements the author takes and discards, um, and
I mean,
what that
that's
says. Yeah.
like intentionality is very obvious when
Mm,
somebody has it and when they execute it through their work, and like
right.
and that's what's appealing about Act 8, as you said, and that's what's appealing about some of your fan fiction as well. Like
Thank you.
some of the fix that you've made in response to Homestuck 2 are like they are obvious that they're responses, but at the same time it's not a response in the sense that you're just saying, well, I didn't like that.
Right.
You're saying like, hey, what if it went differently? And here's a way it could have like been. Here's a way that you could have gotten a similar emotional impact, but kind of couched it in something that made it not necessarily just easier to swallow, but like easier to believe.
Right, and that's something that was actually a project that so that whole AU is a project that's really interesting to work on because my original post canon AU is kind of like, hey, what if I took everything after Act 7 and just ignored the epilogues? And like I did my own thing as far as the characters developing as people, and that was interesting, and I liked it, and it was a cool approach to take. But the other one is like the other one I did was the response to Homestuck 2, and that was what if I took the very 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 beginning of the epilogues and tried to stay kind of close to their I don't know how to put it. I want to say close to their tone, but that's not really true. Kind of like you're sticking close to like the thematic toning of the epilogues, but going in a very different direction. So like it deals with some of the same issues of like um, loss, grief. It deals with issues of like narrative and causality, but it takes a really different approach. And one of the things I did was that the decision to break the the link between what's happening in the real world and the narrative meta crap. So like Homestuck epilogues and Homestuck 2 with like Alt Dirk and Alt Dirk and Alt Calliope go very into like the idea that the narrative is all tangled in with the meta narrative and they're influencing each other and blah 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 blah. And I wanted to take the approach that they're tangled up for this brief second where in the beginning of that story my author character is like, I'm going to make a couple of changes because fuck you. And then after that point the two never interact again. Like all of the cutaways are me arguing with the writers basically. And then the second story, I went even further with that because it's like it's not only me arguing with the writers, it's me talking to one of the characters who's now out of the narrative and is really frustrated because she's out of the narrative. And it's like, I want to get back. Like, you can't. I want you to change things. I can't. Like, this story is underway. Like, these are people now. They're doing whatever they're going to do,
Yeah,
and
that's
we're
kind
just
of a
watching.
direct answer to the, oh, I'll just change anything about the past. 'Cause
Right.
you actually present the people with the situation of, actually, no, you kind of can't
Right.
do that. That becomes a metatextual critique of some of the revisionism that I think Homestuck has embodied after
Right.
this idea of the retcon, you
And,
know?
and I wanted to go into because like I was very influenced by some of the
Literally revisionism, like literally
Right.
embodied revisionism.
retconning. Yeah, I love this guy.
Oh, yeah,
That's
I'm
a
looking up
cool
like,
little
sorry, I've
thing.
been leaving myself notes because I don't want to talk over you,
No,
but
it's all
I'm
right.
looking up like very early fish evolution to draw
Yeah.
this timeline of the evolution of ocean life, and I
Hmm.
just like looking up these early fish. I'm like, I fucking love this guy. Look at him. Look
Yeah.
at his face. Look
But
at him.
so
I love him.
Praise.
we've had a few conversations that have actually really influenced the work I'm going through right now, because we talked a lot about Terezi in particular and Vriska and how
Mhm.
they're kind of like, what's the word? Is it woobified where it's just like, oh, quirky
Yeah.
gremlin
Yeah,
girl.
they're just precious and
Yeah,
quirky
like
and totally innocent. They've done
and
They're
and
nothing
just
wrong and they
my
have no actual problems.
they're
yeah,
my sweet Antifa super soldier.
right,
Did not like have never committed a sin. Like hate
right.
cops, hate the government
And
from the
I
beginning. It's precious,
and
precious in love
Don't do that
transmigrants.
to a character that is
yeah.
like entrenched in so much new symmetry. Don't do it.
And I let
Think about what you're doing for 5 seconds, please.
there were two things I wanted to do with that, and I'm working through
A
that now.
racist principled rage player.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I was gonna say, like, thank you for the compliments, but I'm a rage player, so if I'm not principled about something, I lose my mind and die.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly, every day of my life, having arguments with myself about what I'm doing and
Hmm.
how I'm doing it. And I go to bed every night going, fuck, you fucked up today.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
thinking about
that's a
how I'm gonna,
mood, actually.
yeah, how I'm gonna wait. Well, you're a hope player, so you're on the same axis. How I'm gonna do better tomorrow. Like, I'm always on that. And I had some other idea I was going to build up after that, but I stayed quiet for too long and I forgot. So,
But like one of the things I was doing is with Terezi and her like feelings about her own past, and then the other thing is the way that she's written and Vriska's written with relationship to like June, who has a very different kind of past, and like the idea that they're just like, oh, they're gonna, like the whole shipping thing, which is fine, but it's like this whole like, oh, they're just gonna be in a relationship and everything's gonna be kind of good and like it's fine and everything's fine. But I wanted to go in a direction where it's like, you know what? There's other outside factors that are going to influence how someone thinks, and like Terezi's going through so much stuff, and the idea that she was using her relationship with Vriska as a way of not having to think about all the stuff that she doesn't want to think about, and like
mhm.
she keeps doing that, and then in the beginning of the story, she's kind of transferring that over to June, and then like just can't. Like she gets to the point where it's
Right,
like, you
because
know what,
that's why she immediately latches on to June because she's
right,
trying to find a replacement for this because she's not ready to have the bottom of her coping mechanism fall out from under her.
exactly. And then it does. And it's like every coping mechanism she tries, which are all super unhealthy,
Hmm.
fails. And it's like, oh shit, now I've got to just think about all this stuff. So now I'm at the point of the story where she is starting to address that. But like that's the whole thing. I wanted to look at a version of these characters where it's like, yeah, what do you do if you've done just horrible, horrible things and now you aren't the same person anymore. Like you regret what you did. You hate what you were, and you're in a world where you don't have to be like that anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm gonna post some dialogue actually of something I wrote
cool.
for Lampglow Dancers into the Discord, and you don't have to read it out.
Okay.
But we can just all read it and then amongst ourselves and then go like ooh
Yeah,
and
let me
then
open
let
that
it
up.
be a secret, or is it gonna
Yeah.
ooh,
I'm
okay.
gonna,
um
I think
I'm gonna
that's.
put tildes where there's gaps.
okay.
I think there's also that's also kind of I guess kind of the point of New Game Plus, where like we're dumping every single one of these characters into a world where like most of their coping mechanisms are gone, and like some of them have done bad things, and some of them have like floated through this shit and been traumatized, and some of them have like think everything's fine and like aren't prepared for the bottom to be pulled out from underneath them, and
Right.
that's going to be interesting to get to like I don't know kind of keep shaking a colander until we end up with like the big bits that are left and go, ooh, what's this?
Yeah. And so this
Yeah.
is just a rough sketch of a scene I want for Lampglow Dancers, and the first two paragraphs are Terezi, and then hopefully the voices of the characters are clear from then on.
Mm-hmm.
This is not final, but
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, the way that I am writing Vriska currently is that she is the Vriska that was retconned and is right at the end of Act 7. So she's in a position where she's still very much like fighting against the idea that she isn't able to just do whatever she wants to do. Like she really wants to be able to come in and fix things and control the narrative, and she's being told again and again, you can't do that. Like that's not an option for you anymore. And at the point in the story I'm at is like where she's finally like about to realize that fully. Like every conversation she has with the narrator, because this is me as a narrator. It's not, this
Yeah.
is my author insert. It's not fucking Andrew Hussey. So like, I don't hate my own characters. And like
Oh.
the way that the narrator is, the way I write myself is with my own tone of voice, where I try to be understanding of the characters. Like I don't like Alt Dirk very much. I'm fairly sympathetic to Alt Calliope, although I think she's full of shit in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
like
I'll accept that. Definitely in Homestuck, the
yeah,
epilogues in Homestuck too. She's just kind
yeah,
of bullshit. I,
right.
I I love her as a character, but I love more of what I'm
I
doing.
agree.
What
Yeah,
ends
and
up.
and but like the Vriska character is like engaging in this dialogue with me as a narrator, as a person, and I'm telling her like, yeah, like I tried to make this work for you. Like I can't do it. And like you have to accept this. Like here, haven't you thought about this? And the Vriska character is essentially like, no, I can fix this. And it keeps like every time the dialogue iterates, because it's coming to the point where it's like every couple of chapters there's another long exchange, and it's getting to the point where Vriska's like, no, I guess I can't do anything. Like I do have to accept that other people are there for this woman that I thought I was the only person that could fix and help.
Oh my
And
god, yeah.
it's
Because
like
I love Scourge. I love
I do
them,
too.
but in the same way that I love like Gamzee and Karkat's
Yeah.
relationship, where I'm not invested. Oh, they have to be together for
No,
the good representation. I don't think so.
I think that there's an interesting thing to be said about them together, and I said it in the Forever After AU. I went into a lot of like how they both process trauma. I went into a lot about like how a redeemed Vriska could interact with Terezi and the other characters. I went into a lot. I didn't go into as much of Terezi's backstory as I could have, but I went into a bit of it. I did explore that avenue. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to explore the idea of, what if Risco didn't ever come back, and what would that mean to both of those characters?
Yeah.
Like that whole meta narrative thing where the narrative isn't bleeding over into reality all the time, where it's like, because Forever After it does. In the beginning of the first few fics, narrative bleeds over into reality like hardcore. Like that's the whole plot of like two of the stories. But I wanted to look at the idea of it being like, no, they're just watching what's happening in this other world and commenting on it. It's very much like the Greek chorus, where they're just making commentary on what's occurring. But then the four of those characters are interacting with each other. So like they're still people, but they're people that exist in this separate plane of reality. And like there's the my narrative character, which represents the sort of like consistent authorial voice, but also not, because they're not controlling the story anymore.
Yeah.
Alt Dirk is like the worst of the bad faith, like, oh, this has to be really, bad and challenging to the reader. And Alt Calliope is interesting because Alt Calliope starts out as being like the candy Alt Calliope, like oh yeah, we can fix it, we can just make it better. And then like as the story progresses, and I think I want to do more with this, she's becoming more and more like, maybe I was wrong about that. Like she's actually
I
developing as a
like that
character as
for
well.
her. I'm gonna stop my stream because it's almost noon, and
Uh,
that's usually when I go to. But I'm gonna stay on
cool.
voice chat, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
stay hanging out. So,
I will be stopping.
goodbye to the two people that are
Yeah.
watching, and the people who are watching archively if they figure out
Bye,
how to find these.
YouTube people.
Bye, YouTube people.
Yeah,
All
I'll
right,
leave this
that's
on
done.
for a few more minutes. I'm probably going to go in about 5, because then I've got to
Yeah.
start getting ready. I've got a meeting at
Are you
3.
guys okay with me kind of sharing this YouTube once it's up to Twitter as a way of like people can go here to listen and find out what our principles are about New Game Plus and if they
Yeah,
want to join in? Because
I'm
I think this could be
I'm
very enticing for some very creative people who have been ostracized from the fandom
I'm cool
for a
with
while.
that.
Yeah, let me know when you put it up, and I'll retweet it to the
Okay.
Will Homestuck and New Game
This
Plus accounts as well.
this was my little what are we going to talk about today, and we actually got to most of it. So, but yeah, I think like overall that's I got to thinking about a lot of this. I mean, I've been thinking about it for a long time, like since I started in the fandom, but also like the more stuff that happens, I find myself um, constantly kind of reevaluating where we're at and like why do I do this? Like I
Hmm.
don't want to do things just because like it's fine to do things like because they're fun, but also if you're going to put so much time and effort into something, I feel like it's good to have some meaning to it beyond just oh it's fun. Um,
Hmm.
like I put an incredible amount of time into writing and I put a lot of work into it, and I don't do it just because I'm like oh I'm just going to create some random shit. Um, I like to be able to say
Yeah.
something, and the other thing is I like to be able to connect with other people that are saying things as well.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the things I love about involvement in fan projects is like, it's nice to be a part of that larger whole and like have something to say, um, and like facilitate other people saying things. Like I'm really liking the idea of doing the New Game Plus because it gives me a chance to do a fully collaborative work where it's like the writing is only one part of it. Like it comes together with the art, it comes together with the sound effects and the music and all that, and then it comes together with everyone else's writing. Like the philosophy I've seen that's worked the best, like talking to the Befriendis director about this, is the idea that like each of the route writers kind of has like they're pretty much the one that makes their route, like unless it's a collaborative route. They're kind of like the character expert, and they're the one that set the tone and everything. But then that's all tied into the other routes, so they're aware of the overall narrative through line, and they are aware of what the other writers are doing, so that they can kind of connect things. You connect characters or connect themes, and you come out with this larger whole that feels like it's all tied together. And I think that's one of the things I didn't like about Pester Quest, which overall I did enjoy, but like I feel like it felt very fragmented at times. Like it was,
That's why I think it'll be
yeah,
kind of important to, as we bring people into the project, to create a meaningful community where everyone is able to like feel
yeah,
comfortable with each
exactly,
other. Because that's what I'm a little bit nervous about. Because if we get a Carcat writer that Daft and I can't mesh with, or like any other
right,
writer that we can't mesh with, and if we have to have our routes bounce off each other, and they're
right,
like, no, I don't want my character to have anything to do with what you're doing, like that's gonna
yeah,
destroy the
exactly,
project essentially if it's lateral in that way.
yeah, and I one of the things I think is interesting about this project is like I as far as the route I'm writing, again, won't say which one, but like I didn't go with a character I would normally have like been like, yeah, that's mine, because I felt like the theming for the route that I am writing is more personally resonant with me. And like I wanted to do something where I really believed not only in the character but also in the specific content of the route.
Hmm.
And I think that's really important too. Is like you should have strong feelings about both the character that you're writing and also the content of their route. Like if you're just writing a character that you love in a route that you don't give a shit about, then it's like whatever. It's gonna feel very mercenary, I think.
Hmm.
And that's not. I don't think that's the look we're going for.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what we're trying to get across here. Is like you want this to feel like it's something that matters to somebody, and like that they're all like that we're all talking to each other at least to the point where we can be like, yeah, this is the message we're trying to send with this. This is what we're trying to say. Especially because these are going to be longer than like a Pester Quest route. Um, like we're talking like 45 minutes to an hour plus.
And the
That's
more I'm thinking about this, the more I'm thinking each route can't be limited to one episode because one. You're
Yeah.
not going to actually get people entrenched into a community in one day with a social placement worker.
Oh yeah.
That's not going to happen. And also, if time's progressing, they are probably like, if each episode is maybe a day or a week, that's going to just
Yeah.
give you a bit with each character, and then the next episode will update like the different routes based on
That's
the
so
day.
I know that's something we haven't really talked about, but that's actually
Yeah.
a really good point, is that we do have the option of having multiple passes at the same character.
It
Um,
doesn't have to be linear. That's
Yeah.
actually
right,
one of the
exactly.
if we've got that we've got an inspiration like Google Drive folder. We've also got a channel in the Discord, but like one of the visual novel zine that I dropped in the drive. One of the articles that I really liked in it was a bunch of different ways that you can make choices
Mm-hmm.
in a game, and specifically in a visual novel. And one of them was the ways you could structure it was like as you unlock more information or as time progresses, you can keep returning to characters and
Right.
places.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And
Let
Momo,
me.
you mentioned environment design. It might be
Yes.
like, I don't
I
know.
want to draw some things for you. I'll stream my screen in the voice chat. I'll stream Photoshop, and you can take a look, and we can maybe just actually use this as kind of a work jam session.
Yeah.
And Janaya's recording, so we'll have it for posterity. So my idea, um, is like maybe there's this big cork board in the office you can click on,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll have the active cases open as, and more will be pinned on as with each kind of update, each story update, like each day. And then as more as if anything, if there's ever a development for this case, then they'll get like a little red pin or something, like there'll be some sort of notification system
Mm-hmm.
on it, and then you know, oh, there's something new this update. And then that'll go to like the dialogue scene where
Ooh, yeah.
we'll have Nakadile boy, can't draw Nakadile. Oh, and then like iguana lady will be like, hey,
Ooh,
there's
you
a
just
thing
like
came in. We have a thing, and you'll be like, oh,
Put on the
because
business
he's so
hat.
excited.
It's time for business.
It's time for business, yay! And you can kind of choose which one you do, and then like they'll discuss amongst themselves, maybe as a group. Like Casey's like, I'm taking this one for some reason, or Iguana's like, I think I will do this one today
Yeah.
because I have a contact here that knows this thing. Or they're like, here, new guy, this one's for you. It'll be easy. Or like, just help Karkat job shadow the not mayor of the local city, right? And then I don't know if that's because then we'll have to do a lot of like how this thing is organized and how it's navigated, but like a little world map of like, here's the city, here's the rural area, here's
okay,
the this, here's the that.
I had a brain blast while we were talking earlier because I was thinking about Friends at the Table, and I was like, no, this idea won't work. But now it will. Once we get the team together, we should play a game of the Quiet Year, and we should collaboratively build the world map using an RPG.
That's a good idea.
That sounds like a good idea. I kind of like that. Okay.
I like that
That's
too.
fun.
I don't know if you guys have listened to Friends at the Table, but to this day, one of my favorite things that they've ever produced was their one season Marielda arc where they play Blades in the Dark, and they open their game by playing a game of the Quiet Year to recreate the city. It's a city that exists in the future of, because they're playing a session that's like hundreds of years in the past of their usual setting. Mm-hmm. So it has the same gods, but they're creating the beginning of their gods' mythos during this game, and they play the Quiet Year to do it. So they take a post-apocalyptic game that's like the first year after an apocalypse, and they play that, and they're like, all right, here's what the city's going to look like. Now we're going to scoot forward 10 years and play Blades in the Dark. And it was so cool. But like, really I think that would be really fun to like do for like, hey, what happens right after the gods leave? And we kind of start what that sort of looks like. And then we can like zoom that forward.
Yeah. I'm going to end sharing my screen because I drew the thing I needed to draw.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I'm actually I've got to get going because I have to get ready. I have a meeting at 3 with the paper, and then I'm gonna be filming at the vigil for the gentleman that was killed yesterday. So I'm gonna be out for a while tonight. But Hopefully, it will not end up like last night.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I hope so.
I really thank you both for coming on and talking. I may try to do this in the future, at least as like a concurrent stream with yours, because it'll
Yeah.
boost your reach a little bit, and we can all just kind of talk, and we do that anyway, so why not? Um, so yeah, I might,
Yeah,
I don't need viewership or clout or
I
whatever. I'm not
mean,
trying to extend my
yeah,
reach. I'm just trying to say what
I
I
mean, it gets the
believe. I
word
guess,
out
yeah.
to more people, five
Sure.
more
we are
people.
trying to recruit for
I
a
am trying to
game.
recruit for a
Yeah.
game. That's true.
Yeah. So
Oh,
yeah,
look,
if you're
something called HS New Game Plus followed
yeah,
me on Twitter. What? I wonder what that
if
could
you go
be.
on Twitter and follow HS New Game Plus, which I'm going to put in the chat, we are currently taking applications for writers, artists, musicians, um, for this
Until
project, which we've
October.
been talking about till October. You do have to be over 18, and please be aware that some of the specific routes, especially for the writers, we're looking for people of certain specific identities. Because we are trying to build a diverse team, and we're also trying to talk about specific experiences.
It's also a very principled work, so know
Yeah,
that if you're coming in with, if you don't have anarcho-communist principles, that's fine. But what's the point of us having this principled work if we can't get everybody on
yeah.
board with that?
You
So just keep that in mind as well.
you may be engaging in some struggle if you're a liberal, and if you're a reactionary. I don't know why you're following me, um,
Right.
but
It's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
have you read anything that I write anywhere? But yeah, no, we are
We need people to know what's going on.
right. We're trying to say something with this beyond Homestuck is neat, and we'd like to make that happen. So yeah, if you're interested and are 18 or older, go ahead and check out that Twitter. There is a link to the information document and to the Google form to apply, which has now been fixed so that non-writers don't have to fill out the writer stuff.
yes.
Cool, it has been fixed, so it is 100% working.
Yeah, only one person filled it out before I fixed it,
Okay,
luckily.
cool, awesome.
Or maybe two people, I
Yeah.
think.
That's fine.
Um,
So yeah, thank you. Thanks for watching, everyone that was on. Momo and Bucky, thank you for talking, and
As
I'm
always, it's
pe-
always a pleasure.
people on stream.
yeah, thank you.
I'll see y'all later. Bye.